Tom, I don't know if you can hear me. Has the shouting died down in the House of Commons?
Not for the faint of heart.
Man, I'm telling you. Then again, maybe this is the kind of a thing Justin Trudeau needs to do more of, because when he gets, warmed up, he's as good as yelling as anybody else.
Yeah, and he's finally decided to stop being a punching bag for Pierre Poilievre. It started last week when he said no to François Legault. I've never heard him say no to François Legault on anything, but he said, no, you're not going to take over the immigration into our fair country. Oh, good on you. What a surprising decision. And he's been doing the same thing on other issues. He's digging in on the carbon tax, just saying, you don't care about future generations. You talk about families, you talk about kids, but you know what? You're a climate change denier, and he should just keep punching back against Poilievre and call Poilievre out for what he is, a climate change denier. So, I think that the Trudeau that's finally showed up for the fight is long overdue, but it's fun to see.
By the way, I was thinking maybe what Justin Trudeau needs is, for all the catchphrases that Pierre Poilievre uses, the axe, the tax, and he needs one of his own, does he not? I mean, something like, I don't know, for Poilievre, like clap your trap or, whatever. I think they have to come up with some on their own. I think that's one way to fight back.
Well, I have to tell you that on climate change, much to its shame, this is copyright from 15 years ago for the British Columbia NDP under, we were in opposition at the time, and I'm trying to remember, Carol James was the leader, and this was their clever campaign slogan on the carbon tax. So the Conservatives, who are out there, are called the Liberals. I know that sounds complicated, but the right-wing party in BC was then called the Liberals. They had brought in a carbon tax. They're exempted from the carbon tax, as is Quebec, thanks to our deal with California on cap and trade. So the NDP, the progressive, left-leaning, pro-environment party, they had the following slogan, wait for it, axe the tax. It was on every single campaign poster. So Poilievre is stealing the stuff from a left-wing party.
Not even original.
No.
Well, that's terrible. We're going to have to come up with some for the Liberals. All right, speaking of Liberals, Anthony Housefather still very much in the news. I had a chance to speak to him yesterday afternoon. Look, we spoke about this, I guess, on Tuesday, right, after the story first surfaced, and we were speculating as to how and what might happen. And at one point, I asked you what you thought was going on, because I mentioned Melissa Lantsman had come into Montreal, conservative, basically Pierre Poilievre's right-hand woman, and had been here talking to a variety of groups. And you speculated, you said this.
Pierre Poilievre has been 3 times to different synagogues in Anthony Housefather's riding over the past few months. That's not an accident. It's because Poilievre thinks he can take that riding from Housefather. So his Housefather saying, I'm going to hang up my skates and finish off this term and be done with federal politics because he doesn't want to face that. Is that part of his thinking? I don't know.
After that ran, by the way, I got a text from Anthony Housefather saying, no, that's not the case. And then yesterday when I had him on, Tom, reacting to that, he said this.
Definitely not part of my thinking. I'm absolutely staying a member of Parliament. I'm absolutely running in the next election. I am confident with whatever decision I make, my constituents will support me, and that I will be reelected. So that is not part of the equation at all.
Okay. Let's accept that at face value, but I know you've
Whoa. Stop the music.
Go ahead.
The music. Let's go through that list.
Okay.
I'm staying in Parliament. I'm running for re-election. I'm representing my riding. And I didn't hear anywhere in there, and I will be running with the Liberal Party of Canada. I'm just noting that is the one thing that was missing from that enumeration. Because I don't know if you caught Anthony Housefather's show yesterday in the House of Commons. Well, not direct talks. Well, I know a lot of people in the Conservative caucus. Hey, come on, give me a break. Okay, sorry, Anthony. Yeah, right. So you're not thinking of quitting politics. You're just thinking of maybe joining another party that you've always been against your whole career. Sure, fine, great.
Okay. I want to ask, though, with respect to whatever he decides, and you'd said something that I found really interesting on this, which was, you know what, you can do this, but you can't keep doing this.
You can only do it once, but by the way, I suspect he's already had a chat, or at least his whip has already had a chat with him, because there has to be a pipe down moment. Everybody can go through something very rough. So he had the courage to stand up against Bill C-13, much to his credit. I think he was right on that. That was the federal government under Trudeau, their attempt to I need no further proof than to tell you that Jean-François Roberge on the air on the panel show I do on the French side 2 Fridays ago was boasting that Bill 101 and Bill 96 are now in federal legislation. End of story. Okay, Housefather was right on that stuff. But here you can't keep going. You can't keep saying, well, I'm talking to people about maybe perhaps crossing to the other side, and then just show up for your caucus meeting where all your secrets are discussed and say that you're still a longstanding member of the Liberal Party. And I repeat, in that enumeration that he gave us, he never said he was doing any of that with the Liberal Party.
Is there some chance, I'm asking you to speculate again, that he may decide he has friends in the Conservative Party who he's known? He's been in politics a while. I'm sure he's made some friends. Is there a guarantee that Pierre Poilievre wants Anthony Housefather?
Anything but. Poilievre is very tough on this sort of stuff. Not the floor crossing part. That involves ethics, and that wouldn't bother Poilievre one bit. No, the bit would be, about stuff. He's got a very long memory, and he's the type that, in my experience, has a very big chip on his shoulder the minute something doesn't go his way. So, yeah, it is unseemly. Like the party that I led, the NDP, had a hard and fast rule against floor crossing. Maria Morani, very respected MP who had been with the Bloc, quit the Bloc over their position on human rights and just called them out for racism. And she wanted to cross. She became a candidate for us in the 2015 campaign. But that hard and fast rule meant she could not become a member of our caucus. She could not sit with us because the NDP has always taken this as a strong question of principle. You tell people who you're running for, you get elected for them, you stay with them, or you sit as an independent, but you don't change parties.
Okay. And as to how long this takes Anthony Housefather, I asked that question. Obviously, there's no way to necessarily know. Could it take a day? Could it take a week? Could it take a month?
It becomes like window shopping at some point.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'll go here. Or maybe I'll go there. Maybe I'll stay where I am. You've got to, if this is a question of principle, then it's not something, you don't negotiate on it. You act on it.
I also asked him the question. I know he mentioned that he had met with the Prime Minister on the weekend when he was already contemplating doing this, I guess. But he hasn't met with him since. Do you expect, I may have asked you this earlier in the week as well, given all that's gone on and given the attention that this is now receiving, does Justin Trudeau sit down and have a one-on-one with Anthony Housefather? Does he feel compelled to do that?
I think that Trudeau would, out of respect for the very long service of Anthony Housefather, sit down with him. Don't forget, if they spoke last weekend, it was long before the whole
motion,
thing that set this going, because it wasn't just the NDP motion. It was the Liberals' complete rewriting of it. This is a small detail, but believe it or not, the day this was being rewritten, there were 4 separate cabinet meetings. So that's I've never heard of that before, ever, in Canadian politics. But that's confirmed. They had 4 separate meetings. And I can tell you, Aaron, that's an indication of deep nervousness and serious concern about what this meant. But once it went down to Mr. Carr from Winnipeg and Mr. Mendicino from Toronto and Anthony Housefather from Montreal, Trudeau could just look at the framework and look at the horizon and say, you know what, this landscape I can deal with. And what I found was the most surprising was to learn that Liberals applauded Heather McPherson, who was the NDP member of Parliament from Edmonton, Edmonton Strathcona, who had written the original one, which called for straight, immediate recognition of the Palestinian state with none of the other conditions or anything around it. And they were applauding her. And several of the people on the NDP side who voted for this and brought it, including the one who brought it in, of course, they were all wearing symbols, which you're not actually supposed to do in the House of Commons, wearing symbols that were showing their support for one side in this conflict. So it was very one-sided. Trudeau managed to turn it around and save the day. I think he deserves credit for that. That was quite an artful thing that he did. But at the same time, there's still a lot of explaining to do to a community that's always been close to the Liberals.
Yeah, that's one of the things, of course, that Anthony Housefather brought up that really sort of set him off, I think, this idea that they all stood and gave her a standing ovation when she stood up after this thing had passed. That kind of that was salt in the wound, I think, as far as Anthony Housefather is
to anybody who watches this and anybody who looks at what she had in that original motion, for the Liberals to be standing up and applauding her was, for me, incomprehensible.
Policy-wise here, Tom, just to get off Anthony Housefather for a second, have the Liberals done, or are they doing the wrong thing on this issue, trying to placate both sides in this and really coming off as completely indecisive, or is that just my take?
I think that since the beginning, a lot of this has been driven by Mélanie Joly, and she's quite transparent about the fact that, remember that expression from Tip O'Neill in the United States, all politics is local. She'll quite candidly say, well, look at the demographics of my riding. So a lot of this is driven by the demographics of her own riding. And I also think that her organization that she's the minister of, so this is global affairs.
Right.
Even that name is so pompous. It's no longer external affairs. We take care of the whole planet. It's global affairs. They always, in my experience, they always lean anti-Israel. That's been my experience with them over the years.
Interesting, too, because Anthony Housefather in that interview yesterday said he brought up this point of Justin Trudeau having come into his riding, into Mount Royal with him in the last election to let everyone know, their constituents, that, you know what, that party, the Liberal Party, stood with Israel.
And that's right.
Now,
and
after
Trudeau
this,
has some of his closest advisors, including Stephen Bronfman and others who are incredibly important people in that community, who have been since day one. They in the 2015 election, I can tell you, these are a lot of these people are people that I've worked with over the years and been close to, but they were 100% behind Trudeau, and I don't think that Trudeau sent that elevator back up to the same floor.
Okay. I did want to mention one thing. Breaking story this afternoon, Tom. I don't know if you saw this in Quebec. The Quebec Court of Appeal rejecting the request by the Quebec government to bar access to daycare center for asylum seekers.
Yes. Good.
So there's another sort of, you kind of wonder how the government now will react and suggest that they're too biased. Which way? I don't know. But
this is the saddest part of having the CAQ in power, because to have this type of nattering from the edges, playing this type of game, discriminatory, groups, this is Trump-like. When he came in with his ban against Muslims from people from certain majority Muslim countries, you're playing to a base with, instead of trying to speak to people's best and highest sentiments, you're playing to their lowest sentiments. And what Legault said in the House, in the National Assembly, was quite surprising. He said, yes, what about our little Quebecers, les petits Québécois? What about their right to get into daycare? Well, build more daycares, but you mean these other ones who are here or might become citizens, they don't count, they're pas des petits Québécois. So this is the type of terminology that drives me up the wall with Legault.
Tom, thank you. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
Talk to you.